Hello, happy Sunday. We are live and I will be welcoming soon Simone Finch to talk about her experience with working with me, doing her personal branding, why she's come back for a round two, and just sort of all about that. So, as I always do when I'm speaking as a speaker, someone who has a platform, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting from today and where I will live, work and play. I'm in the Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, and I pay my respects to the traditional custodians, the Bundjalung people of the Yugambeh language region. Pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Hello everyone, I'm going to welcome on Simone Finch, who is going to talk to us about her experience with the lovely brand builders, which she's currently in, but also personal brand coaching with moi, and why personal brand has been important for her. I should have started by saying hello. I can't find back to my earrings. We've got one earring. I'm Emma Lovell and I'm a personal branding coach, and I help female entrepreneurs and leaders just like Simone to show up and make more of an impact by sharing their message and mission with the world. Welcome, Simone. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Hopefully this is working. So you know what I'm like.
You're here. Well done. We've got lovely people jumping in. Oh my gosh, hello. So let's start. I'm interviewing today Simone, who has worked with me in my program, but also is now in the lovely Brand Builders, which is my gorgeous program for women who want to show up more and build their brand. So Simone, I'm going to start with the real easy question. Who are you?
Good question, Emma. So I'm Simone Finch. I'm currently living in Bundaberg in central Queensland. I work as a CEO in the health sector, but also really importantly, and what I really love is my fashion historian work. So as you can see, I'm right into vintage. So I guess, you know, asking who I am, that's who I am, is a vintage girl trapped in the wrong century.
I love it. Yes. And so your profile name, that's talking about your modern vintage life. And
Absolutely.
You're bringing that out more and more. And even you've ended up like getting in the media and things, which is amazing. And people celebrating you for that.
Yeah, it's been great. And look, Emma, as you and I have talked about for a long time, for me, showing up and just being who I am is the most important thing. Early in my career, particularly as I started to work in the 80s, women were taught, hide yourself during the day. You can be who you are on the weekends, but during the day at work, you wear the sensible suit and, follow all the rules. And what I've become really aware of in the last few years, and particularly after doing the work with you, is I just have to be myself. I'm too tired to be anybody else.
It's exhausting, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So even in my everyday life, I dress vintage. I live a very vintage life, and I'm sitting here eating some banana bread that I made from scratch yesterday. So everything I do, as much as I can, is following that vintage sort of space. I keep saying to people, very modern values, and I still obviously have a phone. I still use Instagram. I have an Apple Watch, etc. I use technology for work. But I try and live that vintage life because of how it sits with my ethics and style, frankly.
We're getting some lovely comments for you. We've got looking beautiful as usual, Simone, and you are so inspiring from Ollie M. Costello, which is lovely. And you are inspiring. You have such a diverse and interesting background, and I think that was probably and you can talk to this more, but when you came to me, which was like late 2020, it was wonderful because I didn't even realize you were on my email list, and you just wrote back after I finally sent an email. I always tell the story about you, Simone, and you wrote to me. I was like, oh, love Simone, didn't know she was on my list, but you were like, I think I need this. And so where were you at that time? Like, what was happening for you that made you go, yeah, I need that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 2020 for all of us was pretty tough. For me personally, I was in a place where I'd broken up with someone and was terribly, terribly heartbroken and really questioning what I wanted to do. And I think when you've been through that and been in a situation, in my case, I quite literally couldn't stop crying, was in a space where I just thought, you know what, I have to reinvent myself and do what I want to do. And so I went from there. And so I think for me, and I think anyone who's considering your course and the work that you do, and the big thing you've taught me, Emma, is that I'm not separate. So it's not Simone CEO and Simone fashion historian and Simone friend or Simone partner or whatever. It's just Simone. And so I try to show up all the time as I am. And people either deal or they don't deal, but I've worked out that that's not my business. I just have to do my thing. So I think on a personal level, that work we did in 2020 was amazing, and really just made me really rethink what I was doing in my own life, in my personal life, as well as my professional life. And that continues. And often I'll be doing something and I think, what would Emma say about this? What would Emma's advice be?
I love that I'm just like the little voice in people's head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's been really worthwhile and interesting, as a CEO in the health sector, you can imagine we're dealing with all sorts of madness at the moment. We've got COVID in the hospital. We've got some really interesting challenges. I'm fortunate to be surrounded in the most extraordinary team, but some days it gets really tired. And some days I think I've just got to, pull myself together and put my petticoat on and my vintage jewelry and off I go and just be myself and be vulnerable and tell people how I'm feeling. And there could be some mistakes in doing that. It does mean I'm more vulnerable. But I'm past it now. I'm just going to be who I am, and we'll go with that, I think.
And absolutely. Yeah. And look, and another thing that was coming up for you in 2020, obviously that you'd had that personal thing, but I think you were in a bit of a transition in terms of the work that you were doing. You wanted to be doing more with the modern vintage and bringing that vintage, but also you were actually displaced. Like you weren't in your home place. You were in a temporary situation. And I think one of my clients I worked with this in 2020 as well, like she'd moved from the city to the jungle, like from Melbourne to Brunei. And I think I had the same when I moved. I only moved from Sydney to the Gold Coast. Like beautiful life. Like sometimes we can be in a beautiful place and be in a great situation, but it's that change and that inertia that makes us go, oh, like I don't have my bearings. I don't have what I thought were my foundations. Who am I? On top of all the other things.
Yeah, well, in my case in 2020, I'd moved to the mountains. Now, I did know the mountains. I grew up there in New South Wales. So I'd moved to, the Blue Mountains in this beautiful home, but sort of a month after being moved there and, still crying and bursting into tears in Woolworths, I find that, COVID hits and suddenly my work is in a sort of really crazy situation. And I guess too, I think because I was coming through that personal space, I was thinking, do I go back to being a CEO? Do I stay doing something else? Do I completely reinvent myself? And there was all of those sorts of questions. And look, I have to say, Emma, I still ask those on a daily basis because I want to make sure that I stay relevant and that I'm useful in my role because, particularly in a smallish, Bundaberg's are, 120,000 people, so it's not huge, but it means that it's important the influence I bring to help other people.
Yeah, so, and I think that's great to not ever become complacent. Like, I think that's the thing as well. That's such a great point. I think when people think that they work on their brand, and it was something probably we went through as well, it's like and your website, oh my God, your website, as we know, is never finished. And your brand is never finished because you're going to, even from the 2 years ago, and probably why you're back working with me is because things have shifted again. And they're going to like constantly shift. And so it's like what are the tools, strategy, processes that I have that help me get back to me? And so asking that question on a daily, like, what are my values? What do I stand for? Who am I? And owning that I am Simone. I think that's a great exercise to do daily. And it's not like, oh, I did all this work and now it's changed again. It's like, of course things have changed. Like that's the only constant. But if you understand how to get back to you, the core of you, without having to rely upon your location, your job, the people around you, it's about the core of you, then what a valuable thing to be able to tap into.
I think that knowing that core, certainly has meant that I personally have done a lot more healing that I really, than I thought was possible. So healed myself, stepped back into a role that I love, doing some work that I value personally, and working with some amazing, people that constantly giving me more information. Can I say I could not, for the love of look, for love nor money, for all the money in the world, could not be a nurse, could not be a doctor. These people are extraordinary. But being in a situation where I go, I know what I bring to this situation, and as a team, we do some amazing work for the community and for people who are unwell and scared and just need to come to us to get better. But for me, I think I keep, that question, and you and I've talked about this a couple of times, who cares? So I know for me, the values around, having strong ethics, around my make, do and mend, around the way I see myself in terms of my style. I don't expect other people to dress my way. Although, can I say, I think, the occasional bit of different amounts of fabric would help. But that's being old fashioned. And I keep encouraging people to consider petticoats because they do make a girl feel better. But, that thing of who cares? And I say this to you, I look at it and I think I live this life. Who else cares? And what I keep finding out is other people do care and people are interested. And so
we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, working up that courage to talk about it a bit more. And so, we've been talking a little bit about me doing this brooch of the day now. And I think I'm, almost 6 months in where I'm doing a different brooch every day and talking about it. And it's great. I've ended up with new friends, people in the street come and talk to me about it. It's lovely. So it's an interesting sort of personal journey that I'm learning there.
And that's the thing. I think, like you said before, we don't have to separate ourselves. And it's like, if I talk about this today and I talk about that tomorrow, is that a problem? And it's like, no, but it's, and one of the things I think I told you was like, if it's interesting to you, it will be and you share it with your passion and your interest, others will be interested. And like, yes, there's no way I'm going to live a 1940s life. But I so would love to have a dress up day with you and to I would love you to style me and, to know what that is. I think I might have even wrote to you, I probably should have written to you. My sister was having a, speakeasy sort of, the generations, and I probably went the wrong, like, it's probably a bit short for that, but I got to talk to you about it, because that, and it's just something we can connect on and be interested in. And then sure, we can talk about your CEO work as well. But it was really lovely on one of our group calls where you were sort of like, do people even care? And we were like, yes, we don't know any of this stuff. Like, I don't even know really, apart from the war, what happened then. What does that mean? And and the things that you took for granted, as you're like, duh, everybody knows that. But none of us knew that.
No, I forget. And I think even in our daily lives, bringing our passion in. So for me, I often think, and I've told you I've been doing some early writing on this. I'm looking to write a book, and I'm using some of the Winston. I know it's very early stages, but Winston Churchill's views on leadership during change absolutely fit with what the health sector is going through in COVID. And I said to somebody the other day about wearing a mask, and he said, "Oh, isn't COVID finished?" And I said, "No, we're about to have another peak." So in the health sector, that means we're back into full PPE. We've got very sick people with us. We're worrying about getting them into ICU and getting them out of ICU in one piece. So all of that stuff. And so, me looking at what Prime Minister Churchill, how the women did, the extraordinary work that women did in the Allied countries, and I'm sure in also the other countries that we were fighting with, to keep the countries going. And I think that's really important. And so it's funny, I often will think, wonder how I can handle this. What would I be doing if this was a wartime in our disaster management approach to the pandemic? So it actually does come into my life quite regularly as well.
Yeah, and that's so lovely. Because it's a fusion and it's all of those things. And I think one of the things we did together that was nice for you, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it was like that remembering, because you were feeling so lost the first time we worked together, it was like remembering that you have a lot of expertise, you have a lot of experience, you have a lot of knowledge that, although yes, it doesn't apply to exactly what you're doing right now, it all comes in together to make up Simone. And and with your passion, you don't have to always turn your passion into a job. You can use your passion in other ways, and it could just be the thing that connects you to someone else. Like, I noticed you're wearing a petticoat. That's really cool. My mum used to wear petticoats. Reminds me of her. So what do you do? Leave that behind. And we've just started talking and we've connected as people. Then we can talk about what we're here to talk about. It's just a start. It's a spark, and it makes you interesting. You are very interesting, Simone. Very interesting. It was lovely to see you reclaim that.
It is. And look, it does mean for a level of vulnerability. It does mean that, after our little chat this morning, I'm going to hop in the car and pop up to Spotlight, which is never a good idea because I come home spending entirely too much money. But I need some coat hangers, so I'm going to pop up to Spotlight. And I go, I've got a head wrap on. You can see I've got a 40s head wrap on. I've got a vintage dress on, and I'll have my handbag with me, which the one I'm using at the moment is from the 40s. So it's older than me. I was born in the 60s, and this bag is 20 years older than me. It's extraordinary and still going. And people come up and talk to me. I really enjoy people, often older men, so grandfather level men will come over and say, oh, my wife used to have a dress like that, or my mum wore a hair like that, and people will come and chat to me. But it does make me vulnerable. Sometimes, people will laugh or point or giggle, but I'm okay with that. If that's on them, that's not up to me. But more regularly, people will come and say something and go, that's amazing. We had our work Christmas party last night, and I wore a late 40s dress with petticoats and, the full bit, and the sort of big full skirt. And so many people came over and talked to me. And one of my lovely colleagues' husbands came over and he said, I'm not trying to be creepy, but I just love the way you dress. You look amazing. And I thought, oh, isn't that sweet? It's so lovely to have that. So
absolutely, it doesn't have to be. I think people are so hesitant now of, I guess, cancel culture, and you can't compliment someone. Like, you can compliment someone on their appearance, you can compliment someone. And the fact is, I think I shared this on a live the other day, and I probably shared it with you when we worked together, like 55% of your first impression is visual. It is visual. Absolutely. So it's not all of you. Like, it's not all of you, because you've done like that. You're such a great example of this. Like, there's so much thought and effort and representation that goes into your physical appearance. It's not all of who you are. It's a representation of who you are, but that's what people are getting. A large percentage of the first impression is that. Then, next is tonal and verbal. Like, the words you actually say is so small. So, but if you feel comfortable and confident and you're owning that, then that's going to come across and be like, oh, wow, like, well, that woman's really owning, like, wow, she's like striding down the street and that, I might go and have a chat to her, or you're like, that's so important as well, is to understand what your looks are.
Yeah, and I think that there's two other sort of interesting things that in my sort of fashion history work that happens is people will often share things. I've ended up with this amazing friend because working with him, I was working in medical research last year, and we started talking, and he said, look, the way you dress, it's really unusual, and he's German, and it turned out his grandfather, obviously, was in the German army and was actually a Nazi, and my grandfather was in the British Army and fought obviously against, and yet this friend and I have ended up with this amazing friendship, and we talk about it, and we talk about how our grandfathers would have hated each other, and yet we've got this connection because of basically him saying, you dress really unusually, and why? And I started talking about the war, being very culturally aware of his, I could hear his accent. I knew he was German. So I'm wanting to make sure he didn't think I would judge him or come across at him. Just, often you'll meet people, Japanese or Russians or Germans, and they'll say, oh, like, you're interested in the war. It's like, I'm interested in the social history of the 40s and what we can learn from that. So that's lovely. The other thing, I think, for me, being purposeful in the way I dress slows my life down. And, as a CEO, I have 600 staff. My life is busy. I work this afternoon. It's crazy busy. But being purposeful, like tonight, I will put curlers in my hair and I will sleep in curlers so that I can do a hair set tomorrow. The action of standing in the bathroom and putting curlers in my hair and listening to some jazz while I'm doing it slows my life down. Everything is purposeful. And what that means is, often every morning I look at my diary to see who I'm meeting with. And if there's something I want to say that day, I'll choose a brooch to go with that. So I'll choose something that then speaks to or honours something that the people I'm meeting with. So if I'm meeting with someone who is from a particular cultural background, like recently I was at an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island, or an Aboriginal event. So I've got a lovely Aboriginal art piece brooch that from an Aboriginal artist. So I wore that brooch, because it meant that I spoke to people there and they're saying, oh, and I was talking to about the artist that I had bought it from. So I'm quite purposeful in that. And I don't think humans realise how much that other people understand by the way we look. And so,
well,
being
those little cute like things, they do matter. And
yeah.
I even think, like coming on today, I was like, oh, no, I'm fine, it's fine. And then I was like, no, I think Simone would appreciate that I put, even the other one's not in, the backing fell off, but I was like, but I think Simone will appreciate that I'm wearing the earring. And you have commented, this is one of your colours, you have commented before when I've worn something, and you notice those things. And it's it's nice to sort of go, well, who am I speaking with? How can I still be myself, but channel something for them? And it's like I care. And purposeful is one of your words, I believe, that we worked on. I love that. And I just want to talk about as well the fact that you're a CEO, because I think sometimes with personal brand, people think that it's only for people with businesses, and like you do have an entrepreneurial element, but like for you, how does the personal brand help you show up in your work in the fact that you're in a somewhat corporate environment?
Yeah, look, I think being aware of my personal brand and having one is the thing that holds me up some days. So when you're running a situation where we are at the moment in my hospital, I mean, huge amounts of change, huge amounts of challenges. You only have to look at the ABC website to see how much the health sector has been affected by COVID with our workforce. We've got, I've been advertising for allied health and social workers for 6 months. We've got 2 pharmacist positions out, not even getting applications. So, really big challenges. And on days where it gets tough and I'm thinking, gosh, I'm here, I'm in this lovely town, but I'm here by myself, I'm on my own, and I'm sort of slightly isolated from friends and family. But I know, my ethics around helping others, around being purposeful, around bringing things to the world, about innovation, etc. If I can lean back on those things on days where it's just tough and I just want to sob into my tea, that helps. And also just knowing who I am. I'm not pretending. I don't pretend. This is who I am. And I'm just try and bring that to work. I think the other thing for me is I really, I can't bear injustice. And so I've worked in human rights and justice my whole life, human services. So for me, allowing diversity through the way I present myself is not the same as somebody who might be LGBTIQ+ or live with a mental illness or all of the other sort of diversity challenges we might have. But what it does do, it gives, when they see the big boss being a bit brave and a bit different, it gives them permission. And I was talking to a friend today, and she's a lesbian and she has a wife. And I said, oh, well, I have no right to speak. And she said, because of being straight. And she said, Simone, you in that office speaking for us holds the space for us. And that's really important. And so for me, that's the stuff that I think if I can hold space because I happen to be the powerful girl in that big office, that speaks right into my ethics. And that's the thing that gives me the energy to put my feet on the ground some days where I just want to stay in bed.
That's such an important point. I heard that recently from people from diverse backgrounds, and also, and I think it's that thing of like standing beside. So we're not standing in front, standing back, because like it was like, let's be quiet, it's your turn. And they're like, for people who don't necessarily have the platform, if you have the platform, which I also have, I have a platform here, podcast, I have the place, or I'm holding the microphone, I can hand the microphone, but not step away from the stage and not leave them alone, stand beside them and say, I've got the stage, come on the stage, let's share the stage. Or,
Absolutely.
I think it's standing beside and standing with and doing it together, not just going, oh, we'll step back and be quiet. It's like you do have a position of privilege, and use your privilege. Use that privilege.
And your activity around it. I remember my ex-husband saying to me once, he said, you vote on stuff that doesn't affect you. And I was like, absolutely. And I remember this particular election that we were talking about, and there was the whole issue of childcare. Now, I don't have children, but for me, having that conversation in the at that federal level was really important. And my ex-husband said, why would you care? And I said, because if we have better childcare in Australia, it means there are more women in the workforce because they get to make different choices, because it generally is women who stop paid work. And I said, they get to make different choices. So I get to have other clever women around me. That's really important to me. Now,
Yeah.
and will that change my vote? Absolutely it will, because I look at it and I think I'm white, I'm middle class, I'm straight, I'm from a, general, I'm from a Anglo background. I'm absolutely so mainstream, it's ridiculous. And yet I've got all this power, so I get to hold that for other people. And that's one of the other things I like about being, getting into my own diversity, so to speak, because I have the power to be able to do it and hold that space for others, whether they, we've got some young women at work that are wearing hijab at work, and I said to them, I cover my head too on occasion for very different reasons, but that's actually about talking about how we see the way we cover ourselves, how we see the way we turn up, how we dress, what's important to us culturally, and that's important to me, that they think that they know they're safe to do that in their environment and they're welcome.
That's so good. And I just, this you said it early on, and I just want to repeat it again. It's that whole, we cannot separate our professional and personal. Like, it is more than ever, it's melded. That is very, I'd say, a 1960s way of working. It's like, leave your personality at the door, no, like, come in and you do your job and then you go home. But it's like, well, I asked you probably the questions like, when was the best time you had at work? Like, when you think about your best work experience, it was probably the people that were around you, not necessarily the work that you were doing. Or maybe it was the place you were living in, or there was something great going on in your life. Like, it wasn't just the work, because work is work and we can do it anywhere, anyhow. And I would hope you have the skills and qualifications to do your job. Absolutely. Now more than ever, culture is so important, and you don't want to have to pretend to be someone to get a role that you then have to continue to show up in that pretend state or that acting every day. Like you said before, it is draining, it is exhausting, and you did it for years because of that was the way it was done.
Yeah, and also made choices that I would not do things to please random other people, and those people didn't even know existed, I'm sure. But there was this sort of, you do this to because they don't like it. I don't care. I'm over they. And when I got this job, I have tattoos on my feet, and I got my first tattoo at 51. So clearly wildness came to me late. So I now have 3, but I have 2 on my feet. And when I got the job, and bless her darling heart, but I'm from a very conservative family, and my mum said, you'll have to wear tights. You can't have people seeing you've got tattoos. And I said, why not, Mum? And she's I was not going to have the debate with her, but it was more around exploring her view. And it was, you're the CEO, you have to be a representation of what that means. And I said, I am. And so, I regularly, everyone knows I have tattoos on my feet. I don't cover them up. Obviously in winter I wear dark tights, but the rest of the time I do what I need to do, and people know. And they're there on purpose. They're there to tell a story. I like the idea of using our bodies to narrate our story. And yeah, exactly. I won't show the other one. The world doesn't need to see my thighs. And I'm planning another one. I'm planning some here on my arm, so they'll be more visible. And that's who I am, and I really enjoy that. And I love that we have staff now who will come and, I was talking the other day to one of the team, and she just got the new tattoo and sort of rushed in to show me, which I love, and talking about what that meant for her and that narrative. And
conversation starter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, it's like you would ask someone about their necklace. You can ask someone about why are you wearing that? Like, does that necklace mean something to you? Yeah, it does. I'll tell you the story. It's a story. It's lovely. It's why I love, I do like, you're a big fan of op shopping, and I like op shopping or hand-me-downs. I also like shopping when I travel, because then the clothes have a story. I find going just to malls or big shopping centers, or shopping just because, I find it because my clothes, really like you, need to tell a story. And people probably just want to compliment me sometimes, but I'm like, no, you're getting the full getting the full history of this piece of clothing. But it's a conversation starter. I think it's so lovely. And it is funny. I used to contract at World Vision, which is a Christian values organization, and a woman was coming to interview for my team, and she said, oh, is it okay, should I cover up my tattoos? I was like, the woman interviewing you has like a half sleeve. No. But it was so funny that they're like, oh, it's a Christian organization, therefore I can't have tattoos. I was like, I have a tattoo. Like, literally the woman interviewing me has a tattoo. The values are Christian, and the organization, yes, but like, it doesn't mean that, you know, the individuals all have to look a certain way, and it's that's still yeah, I guess we sort of stereotype and
yeah, absolutely. And you know, most Christians I know are pretty cool people. Yes, there's going to be, and there's going to be some people who judge on tattoos. If you're going to judge me because of some ink on my skin, that's on you. You know, I can't be bothered with people like that. I think just back to the op shopping. I mean, you know, as you know, I'm a real op shopper. It's funny. Years ago, I was at work and CEO, and somebody said, "Oh, I wish I could afford to dress the way you dress," and I went, "Really?" And she said, "Oh, I can't afford to dress the way you dress." And I said, "This entire outfit is op shopped." And last night I was talking to some of the girls who are in my admin and cleaning and hospitality teams at hospital, and they said, "Oh, do you think we could do an op shopping trip?" And I said, I'm always up for op shopping, and I'm happy to hang out with other women who want to do that. So we were talking about maybe planning something at work, and so for me, I also have things that I collect. So brooches, obviously. Vintage handbags, so handbags from the 40s. But also all the headscarves that I wear mostly are op shopped, but I collect tourist ones. So I collect ones that have got countries on them, and often try to collect ones that have got countries where I want to go. So I'm desperate to go to Guernsey in the next couple of years, which is off the coast of, well, between England and France. And I have an op-shopped Guernsey scarf that I will take with me, and I will wear wrapped around my head and be a 40s girl in Guernsey. So, you know, so I try and have those stories as well. And it's great fun. It's lovely. And it's great to talk to people.
And so in my brand builders, I've actually, you know, the other week I was talking about bringing in an expert, which I did. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the values is I bring together all my experts. And so I had an expert present, and then I just had this moment where I went, all of my group are experts. The women I'm working with are experts. And so I said, why do you all want to have the opportunity? I've got a platform. You can have the opportunity to present. So then Simone wanted us to pick, and I think most of us picked, we wanted the op shop one. I want the op shop one for her to present to us on.
I will, and I'll put that together.
She's going to present multiple, but it was like, you know, that was the thing. It was like, yeah, well, we could totally do both. We could do disaster crisis management, like, because you were 100% an expert in that, but you also are an expert in representing who you are through your fashion and doing it at an op shop. That is something that I find challenging. So, you know, it's just that change of perception of what is an expert, you know, and what do you have to talk about, and that you can talk about personal things. We don't have to always use our channels just for shameless self-promotion of our services or of our occupation.
Yeah, and like I say to you, honestly, I look at that and I think, who cares? Does anyone really care about this stuff? It's interesting, Emma. During the week I was in Gladstone doing some work, and on the Wednesday I was going to go and see a friend, but turns out he wasn't well, so I thought I'll just go and sit in a pub and have a glass of champagne and some pub food, which is very much my thing. I'm very much a pub girl, and of course dressed the way I dressed in a little workers pub in Gladstone. I was standing out like a sore thumb, which was fun. But I sat there, and I always carry a book with me. I always have notepads, and I sat and I thought, right, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write the chapters of, like, just write out possible chapters for a book. And an hour and something later, I have the makings of 3 books, and they were just top of the head, one glass of champagne. So it wasn't that I was getting boozy. But yeah, it was just, wow, I've got all this stuff trapped in my head that is actually interesting. And there are some things I can talk about. So I'm going to sit today and put a bit of a structure together on my computer and sort of try and work out how I do that. But I think I think lots of people have got this expertise that they just don't realise that they're really clever and needed.
Yeah, they're not even sharing it. And we need these stories. We need interesting things. And when you share those things, you find your people. Like, you should attract and be around the people that you want to be around. And if people don't like it, then cool. You're like, that's awesome. That's just giving me a notification that you're not the one for me. I'd rather be spending my time over here. And I'm just loving how you're showing up. I know you and I could talk for 3 hours, so I'm going to wrap us up. I guess as a finish, if anyone was thinking about joining the course or working on their personal brand, is there any, like, I guess, highlights you could give for them or any insights?
Yes. So I think, and as you know, I've talked to my best girlfriend about joining, because I think it would give her the world of, and she's a very, very skilled and talented executive, international executive, in fact. But I think this would really, the thing about it being personal is that it gives you the space to force yourself to actually think about that stuff, because I've got a couple of degrees. Clearly, you can see behind me, I'm book mad. All of this stuff we can find in books. But what you've done is push me to think about it differently and hold myself accountable. And I really like that. So doing the course holds me accountable. And I put our little get-togethers in my diary. So even though often my diaries, I've often got 12 and 14 meetings in a day, but I put it in there to hold myself accountable and actually do the work. But I think the thing that is really... I do. Well, I do. Yeah. And sometimes I think, oh my heavens, and I've got to run. But it's really important to me to have that space to think. The other two big things for me are the group, having other people around, and sometimes being able to give really gentle and encouraging feedback to other women. For me, and obviously I'll do that with anyone. It's not just women, but it's a lovely space to be able to say, actually, you're really clever, and have you thought about this, or what you're doing is really good, or just being able to give a bit of support to other people is great, because I don't necessarily always get that opportunity, and be able to then say, I've got these skills, can I share? Would it help me to share them with you? And then just really pushing my boundaries around thinking about different things. I'm in my mid-50s now. There's a point at which I want to retire from full-time work, but what do I want to do next? And how do I reinvent myself? And I'm putting a lot of thought and time into thinking about that. And I've probably got another 15 years of work now, paid work, full-time work. But it's like, what's next for me? And what more adventures do I want to have? And every now and then I get really expansive and think about adventures, and then I get a bit nervous about that because, having been hurt before, you can be a little gun shy. And so I think, no, step back, breathe a little bit, and what's the next thing? I'm actually, this afternoon, I've got some paint here and I've got a frame, and I'm going to do myself a vision board. And and look, I've done them before and they're great. And although finding vintage pictures in modern magazines is quite the push. So there's some printing from Pinterest that's happened. So, but I'm going to put that together and just have a cup of tea and do a bit of self-focus and think about that for myself.
I love it. Well, it's been my privilege to work with you, Simone, over the last few years. And you're coming on the retreat, which is fantastic, in February, which is so exciting. This is the thing that I love, like you said, bringing together such a diverse group of women, but finding points of connection and then seeing you support each other. So it's not just me going there and going, do this, do that. That's definitely not what I do as a coach. I'm there to guide and support and hold accountable. But these other women, you all have such expertise. Like in that group alone, we could run the world. It's amazing. Yeah. So I just want more people to come in and to feel this goodness and to support each other more. So thank you for being there. Thank you for being here today. And Simone, how can people contact you or follow you?
Well, I guess the best Instagram so it's at modern.vintage.life. So easy to find me on there. I've just recently had some challenges at work, so I've made it private. But if people just ask to join, I'll join people up. Just trying to keep things I've been a little vulnerable lately, so I've just closed that down a bit. Obviously LinkedIn, Simone Finch, I'm easy to find, and I'll start talking about my writing on that fairly soon. Just have to get a bit of headspace to do that. So, yeah. But Modern Vintage Life is really the best place. Instagram is where I go mostly because it's a nice, non-political space where it's just lots of prettiness. And for me, following all the amazing vintage people around the world who are my tribe. And I love that. And I can connect with them in that space.
It's so wonderful. Thank you for today. Thank you for being who you are and bringing such interest and dynamic energy to our group. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks when you're up. And hopefully I'll come to see you. And also, the retreat. I'm very excited. And then at some point, I'm going to, follow you to India and do some cool stuff in India when we get the chance to. I will do it. We've just got to work out when. So,
well, you might. I really want to do. That's a little coming soon. So maybe I'll announce it on the retreat. But it's in the works. So always something. There's always something with us. That's the problem. Too many ideas.
Yeah, that's all right. We've got lots of time. It's all good.
All right. Beautiful. Okay. Thanks, Have a good day. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.